The thunder cracked overhead as Logan Yeats galloped across the Wyoming plains, his two young sons clinging to his broad back like frightened squirrels to an oak. It was 1878, and the storm matched the tempest in his heart, 3 years a widower with 2 boys who barely remembered their mother's face, and a ranch hanging by a thread as thin as prairie grass in drought. "Pa, are we going to make it before the rain gets worse?" 10-year-old Samuel shouted over the wind, his small fingers digging into Logan's worn leather coat. "We'll make it, son," Logan called back, though he wasn't entirely certain. Shelter was still a good 5 miles away, and the darkening sky promised no mercy. 8-year-old Daniel, the quieter of the two, said nothing but pressed his face against his father's back, a silent prayer in his trembling form. When Logan spotted a small homestead nestled against the foothills ahead, relief washed over him like a cool stream in July. It wasn't his destination, but any port in a storm would do. As they approached, he noticed the tidy vegetable garden, the smoke curling from the chimney, and a woman standing on the porch, her hand shielding her eyes as she watched their approach. "Hello there." Logan called out, reining in his horse as they reached the front yard. "Beg your pardon, madam, but my boys and I got caught in this weather. Might we take shelter in your barn until it passes?" The woman stepped forward, and Logan felt something shift inside him. Her chestnut hair was gathered in a simple knot at the nape of her neck, and her eyes, green as spring grass, regarded him with a mixture of caution and kindness. "I'm Olivia Dawson," she said, her voice clear and steady despite the rumbling sky. "And you're welcome to more than the barn, mister. That rain's fixing to pour any second now." As if on cue, the heavens opened. Logan scrambled down from his horse, helping his sons after him as Olivia ushered them toward the house. "Thank you kindly, Mrs. Dawson," Logan said, removing his hat as they stepped inside. "I'm Logan Yeats, and these are my boys, Samuel and Daniel." The interior of the cabin was modest but warm, with a fire crackling in the stone hearth and the smell of something savory simmering in a pot. Logan noticed a small portrait on the mantel of a man in a Union Army uniform. "It's Miss Dawson now," she said, following his gaze. "My husband Thomas fell at Gettysburg. It's been 15 years, but sometimes it feels like yesterday." Logan nodded, understanding all too well the way grief could compress time. "My Margaret's been gone 3 years. Fever took her." A flash of recognition passed between them, the silent acknowledgement of shared loss. "Pa says we shouldn't talk about Mama too much 'cause it makes him sad," Daniel blurted out, his small voice filling the sudden silence. Logan's face flushed with embarrassment, but Olivia's expression softened as she knelt to Daniel's level. "Is that so?" She looked up at Logan before returning her attention to the boy. "Well, I think memories are like stars. Even on the darkest nights, they're still there, helping us find our way." Something in her words, so simple yet profound, made Logan's throat tighten. He had been so focused on his own pain, on simply surviving day to day, that he'd never thought about how his silence affected his sons. "You boys must be hungry," Olivia said, rising to her feet. "I've got a stew that could use some tasting." Over dinner, Logan learned that Olivia had been managing the small homestead alone since her husband's death, growing enough to sustain herself and selling the surplus in town. She had no children of her own, a fact she mentioned with a flicker of old sorrow, but her eyes brightened as she listened to Samuel's animated tales of their ranch and Daniel's shy descriptions of the books he loved to read. "They're good boys," Olivia said later, after the children had fallen asleep by the fire. "You should be proud." "Most days I just feel like I'm failing them," Logan admitted, surprising himself with his candor. Margaret knew how to talk to them, how to make them laugh. "I'm just trying to keep them fed and the ranch running." Olivia studied him thoughtfully. "Children need more than food and shelter, Mr. Yeats. They need to know it's all right to remember, to feel joy even when there's been sorrow." The storm raged through the night, and by morning, the creek between Olivia's homestead and town had swelled beyond crossing. Logan found himself accepting Olivia's invitation to stay another day, and then another, as they waited for the waters to recede. During those days, Logan watched in wonder as his sons seemed to come alive under Olivia's gentle attention. She taught Samuel how to knead bread dough, laughing when he got flour on his nose. She showed Daniel her small collection of books, treasures she'd carried with her from Boston years ago. And she asked them about their mother. "What was your favorite thing that your mama used to do?" she asked as they sat shelling peas on the porch, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. Samuel thought for a moment. "She used to sing this song about a coyote when she was brushing our hair." "Pa doesn't brush our hair." "I reckon that's true," Logan said from where he was repairing a loose porch step. "Though in my defense, you boys hardly sit still long enough for me to try." "What about you, Daniel?" Olivia prompted. Daniel's small fingers paused in their work. "She used to let me help her with the garden. She said I had special hands that made things grow better." Logan felt a pang in his chest. He'd let Margaret's garden go wild after her death, unable to face the memories it held. He hadn't known Daniel remembered those moments with her. "Special growing hands," Olivia said with a smile. "That's a fine gift. Maybe you could help me with my garden while you're here." The water receded after 4 days, but Logan found reasons to delay their departure. A wheel on their wagon needed fixing. The horse seemed weary from the journey. Small excuses that neither he nor Olivia questioned too closely. On their 6th morning at the homestead, Logan woke early to find Olivia already outside, feeding her chickens. The dawn light caught in her hair, turning it to burnished copper, and he realized with a start how much he'd come to enjoy her company. "Morning," he said, joining her by the coop. "The boys still sleeping?" She nodded, dusting her hands on her apron. "Like logs." "Samuel was up late asking me all manner of questions about the stars. That one's got a curious mind." "He gets that from his mother," Logan said, and was surprised to find the words didn't carry their usual weight of pain. "Mr. Yeats, Logan, please." "Logan," she corrected with a small smile. "I hope I haven't overstepped these past days encouraging the boys to talk about Margaret." He shook his head. "No, in fact, I think it's been good for them. For me too, if I'm being honest. I've been so afraid of stirring up my own grief that I didn't consider they might need to remember her." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the chickens peck at the feed. "What will you do when you get back to your ranch?" Olivia asked. Logan sighed. "Same as always, I suppose. Try to keep the cattle healthy, the boys fed, and the bank satisfied with whatever payments I can scrape together." It sounds lonely. The observation, so simply stated, struck Logan like a physical blow. "Yes," he admitted, "it is, Pa, Miss Olivia." Samuel's voice broke the moment as he came racing around the corner of the house, Daniel trailing behind him. "Can we stay for one more day, please? Daniel wants to help with the garden, and you said the creek's still high anyway." Logan looked at Olivia, a question in his eyes. "I could use the help," she said with a shrug, but her smile told him she wanted them to stay as much as the boys did. One more day turned into a week, and then 2. Logan rode into town for supplies, bringing back not only food and seeds but also a small wooden box filled with pencils and paper for Daniel, who had shown a talent for drawing, and a pocket knife for Samuel, who had been eyeing Logan's with envy. He also brought back news that made his stomach twist with anxiety. The bank was foreclosing on several properties in the area, and rumors were that his ranch might be next on their list. "I need to go back," he told Olivia that night, after the boys were asleep. "I've neglected things too long already," she nodded, her face illuminated by the firelight. "Will you take the boys?" Logan hesitated. "They're happier here than I've seen them in years, and if what I heard in town is true, I might be facing some hard times ahead. Maybe. Maybe they could stay with you a bit longer, just until I sort things out." The request hung in the air between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to voice. "Of course they can stay," Olivia said softly. "But Logan, whatever troubles you're facing, you don't have to face them alone." He looked at her then, really looked, and saw not just the woman who had shown kindness to strangers in a storm, but someone who understood loss and resilience, someone whose quiet strength had begun to heal not just his sons but Logan himself. "Thank you," he said, the words inadequate for the gratitude he felt. Logan departed the next morning, promising the boys he'd return within a week. Samuel took the news with a brave face, but Daniel clung to Logan's leg, his small face scrunched with worry. "You will come back, won't you, Pa?" He whispered. Logan crouched down, meeting his son's anxious gaze. "I give you my word, Daniel, nothing could keep me away." As he mounted his horse, Olivia handed him a small package wrapped in cloth. "Some bread for the journey," she said. "And Logan, whatever you find at the ranch, remember there's always a place here for you and the boys." The week that followed was one of the hardest in Logan's life. The ranch had suffered in his absence, fences broken, cattle scattered, and worst of all, a notice from the bank giving him 30 days to make good on his debt or lose everything. He worked from dawn until well past dusk, mending what he could, rounding up the stray cattle, and trying to figure out how to conjure money from thin air. But each night, as he collapsed into his empty bed, his thoughts drifted to Olivia and his boys and the quiet peace he'd found in her home. On the 6th day, as Logan was attempting to repair the roof of the barn, a familiar voice called up to him. "You know, it might go faster if you had some help." Logan nearly fell off the roof in surprise. Olivia stood in the yard below, a wagon beside her with Samuel and Daniel waving excitedly from the back. "What are you doing here?" Logan asked, scrambling down the ladder. "Daniel had a feeling you might need us," Olivia said, her eyes taking in the state of the ranch with a practical gaze. "And I've never been one to ignore a child's intuition." Logan was speechless as his sons tumbled from the wagon to wrap their arms around his waist. "Pa, we brought food," Samuel announced proudly. "And Miss Olivia knows how to fix fences better than anybody. She showed us on the way." "Did she now?" Logan looked at Olivia with newfound admiration. "A woman alone learns to do all manner of things," she said with a shrug, but there was a hint of pink in her cheeks. With Olivia and the boys' help, the work that had seemed insurmountable began to take shape. Olivia's practical knowledge of farming and homesteading complemented Logan's ranching skills, and together they accomplished in days what would have taken Logan weeks alone. But the bank notice still loomed, a shadow over their progress. "How much do you need?" Olivia asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Logan named a sum that made him wince, not a fortune by some standards, but more than he could hope to gather in the time remaining. Olivia was quiet for a moment. "I have some savings," she said finally. "From Thomas's pension and what I've managed to put away over the years, not enough to cover everything, but it might help." Logan stared at her, stunned by the offer. "Olivia, I couldn't possibly. It's an investment, not charity," she interrupted. "Your land is good, Logan, better than mine in many ways. With proper care, this ranch could thrive again." "Why would you do this?" Her eyes met his, steady and clear. "Because in 2 weeks, I've seen those boys laugh and talk more about their mother than in all the days before. Because you're a good man trying to do right by his family, and because—" She paused, her voice softening. "Because I've been alone a long time and I'm tired of it." The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Later that night, after the boys were asleep, Logan found Olivia standing by the corral, gazing up at the stars. "I've been thinking about your offer," he said, coming to stand beside her. And I'm grateful beyond words, but I can't take your savings, Olivia. It wouldn't be right." She turned to face him, a hint of disappointment in her expression. "But," Logan continued, gathering his courage, "I have another idea, a partnership of sorts." "What kind of partnership?" "The kind where you and I combine our resources. Your homestead, my ranch, your wisdom, my labor. Your kindness with my boys, my—" He took a deep breath. "My growing affection for you." Olivia's eyes widened. "Logan Yeats, are you proposing a business arrangement or something else entirely?" "Maybe both," he admitted with a small smile. "I know it's sudden and I'm not asking for any promises beyond giving it a try, but these past weeks have shown me what's possible when we work together. And the boys adore you." "And what about you, Logan? What do you feel?" He stepped closer, emboldened by the warmth in her gaze. "I feel like a man who's been wandering in the dark, suddenly finding a light. I feel hope again, Olivia, and I haven't felt that in a very long time." She reached out, her hand finding his in the darkness. "Then I accept your partnership, Mr. Yeats, all parts of it." With Olivia's help and her savings combined with what Logan could borrow from a few loyal friends, they managed to satisfy the bank enough to extend the loan. The next months were busy ones as they worked to integrate their 2 properties. Olivia kept her homestead, using it to grow vegetables and raise chickens, while focusing their efforts on making the ranch profitable again. The boys flourished under the new arrangement. Samuel took to ranching like he was born to it, eager to learn everything Logan could teach him about cattle and horses. Daniel, true to his nature, divided his time between helping Olivia with her garden and developing his talent for drawing, filling pages with sketches of the landscape and animals around them. By the time autumn painted the hills in gold and crimson, the partnership had evolved into something deeper. Logan found himself looking for reasons to visit Olivia at her homestead, bringing small gifts, a jar of honey from a trader passing through, a ribbon he'd purchased in town, wildflowers gathered during his rounds checking the cattle. One crisp October evening, as they sat on Olivia's porch watching the boys chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, Logan took her hand in his. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said, his voice low enough that the children couldn't hear. Olivia turned to him, her face softened by the fading light. "What is it? The winter will be here soon, and traveling between the ranch and homestead will get difficult." "Yes, I've been thinking about that too." Logan took a deep breath. "Olivia, these past months have been the happiest I've known since Margaret died. The boys are thriving, the ranch is recovering, and I find myself thinking about you more than is probably proper for just business partners." A small smile played at the corners of her lips. "Is that so, Mr. Yeats?" "It is, Miss Dawson." He squeezed her hand gently. "What I'm trying to say, not very elegantly I'm afraid, is that I would be honored if you would consider becoming my wife." Olivia's free hand went to her throat, where a simple silver locket, a gift from her first husband, had hung for as long as Logan had known her. For a moment, he feared he'd moved too quickly, asked for too much, but then she smiled, a smile that reached her eyes and lit her whole face. "Yes, Logan. I would like that very much." The news was met with jubilation from the boys, who had grown to love Olivia as if she'd always been part of their family. "Does this mean you'll be our new mama?" Daniel asked, his small face serious as he helped Olivia pack her belongings for the move to the ranch house. Olivia knelt down to his level, taking his hands in hers. "I would never try to replace your mama, Daniel. She'll always be your mother, and we'll keep her memory alive always. But if you'll have me, I would be honored to be a mother to you in my own way." Daniel considered this, then nodded solemnly. "I think Mama would like you. She always said we should be kind to people, and you're the kindest person I know." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she pulled the boy into a hug. "Thank you, Daniel. That means more to me than you can know." They were married in the small church in town just before the first snow, with the boys standing proudly as witnesses and a handful of neighbors in attendance. The ceremony was simple, the celebration afterward modest but joyful, with food and music and laughter filling the ranch house until late in the evening. That night, after the guests had departed and the boys were finally asleep, Logan found Olivia standing by the window in their bedroom, gazing out at the moonlit landscape. "Any regrets, Mrs. Yeats?" he asked, coming to stand behind her, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. She leaned back against him, her head finding its place beneath his chin as if they'd been fitted together by design. "Not a single one, nor I," Logan murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Though I never imagined when I rode through that storm that I'd find not just shelter, but a new beginning." Olivia turned in his arms, her green eyes meeting his blue ones. Perhaps that's what love is, finding shelter in each other through life's storms. As winter settled over the Wyoming territory, the Yeats family settled into their new life together. The ranch house, once echoing with the ghosts of what had been lost, now resonated with the warmth of what had been found. Olivia brought with her not just her practical skills and gentle wisdom, but also her books, her love of music, and her belief in the healing power of shared memories. Under her guidance, the boys began to speak more freely about their mother. Samuel remembered how she'd taught him to whistle using a blade of grass, while Daniel recalled the stories she'd invent about the shapes of clouds. Logan, too, found comfort in sharing his memories of Margaret with someone who understood the complex tapestry of love and loss. In turn, Olivia spoke of Thomas, his courage, his love of poetry, the dreams they'd shared of children who never came. There was no jealousy in these exchanges, no sense of competition with the past. Instead, there was acknowledgement that their previous loves had shaped them into the people they were now, people capable of loving again. The winter passed in a blur of cozy evenings by the fire, snowball fights with the boys, and nights where Logan and Olivia discovered each other anew, learning the language of touch and tenderness that belonged to them alone. Spring brought new life to the ranch calves in the pasture, seedlings in Olivia's expanded garden, and unexpected news that left Olivia both joyful and apprehensive. "Logan," she said one evening as they walked along the creek, the ice long melted and wildflowers beginning to dot the banks. "There's something I need to tell you." He looked at her, noting the mixture of happiness and worry in her expression. "What is it?" "I'm with child." Logan stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. "Are you certain?" She nodded, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. "I've suspected for a while, but now I'm sure. I'm 40 years old, Logan, at my age having a baby." He pulled her into his arms, cutting off her concerns. "Olivia, this is wonderful news, a miracle. But the risks, we'll face them together," he assured her, his voice firm with conviction. "You're strong, Olivia, stronger than anyone I know, and Dr. Mitchell in town is a good man skilled with birthing." She relaxed slightly in his embrace. "You're truly happy about this." "More than I can say," Logan whispered, his throat tight with emotion. "When Margaret died, I thought that chapter of my life was closed forever. But you, Olivia, you've given us all a second chance at happiness. This baby is part of that gift." Telling the boys was a moment Logan would treasure forever. Samuel, now 11, responded with excited questions about whether it would be a brother or sister. Daniel, quieter as always, asked Olivia if the baby would know about their first mother. "Of course," Olivia assured him, drawing the boy close. "Just as this baby will know about my Thomas. Our family may not look like others, but it's built on love and honesty, and that's what matters most." As Olivia's pregnancy progressed, the ranch continued to prosper. Logan used his restored credit to invest in better breeding stock, and they sold off a portion of Olivia's homestead land to a young couple just starting out, keeping the cabin as a retreat for when they needed a change of scenery. Summer came, hot and dry, bringing with it the usual challenges of ranching life: long days moving cattle to fresh pasture, vigilance against prairie fires, and the constant search for water. Logan hired a young man named Caleb to help with the heavier work, allowing him to spend more time close to home as Olivia's time drew near. On a sweltering August afternoon, as thunder rumbled in the distance promising a break in the heat, Olivia felt the first pains. Logan sent Samuel galloping into town for the doctor, while he and Daniel prepared the bedroom according to Olivia's calm instructions. "Remember when we first met?" Olivia asked between contractions, her face pale but determined. "There was a storm then too." Logan wiped her brow with a cool cloth. "I remember thinking you were the most capable woman I'd ever seen, standing on that porch like you owned the whole Wyoming territory." She managed a smile despite her discomfort. "And I remember thinking you looked lost, and not just because of the weather." "I was," Logan admitted, holding her hand as another pain seized her. "Lost in every way a man can be, but not anymore." The labor was long and difficult, testing Olivia's strength and Logan's faith. When the doctor arrived, his experienced hands and steady presence provided some reassurance, but as night fell and then gave way to dawn with still no baby, Logan found himself praying as he hadn't since Margaret's final hours. "Please," he whispered, standing by the window as the first light of day painted the eastern sky. "Please don't take her too." As if in answer to his prayer, a cry pierced the morning stillness, not Olivia's cry of pain, but the indignant wail of a newborn announcing its arrival in the world. "A daughter," the doctor declared, placing the tiny, red-faced infant on Olivia's chest. "A strong one by the sound of her." Logan moved to Olivia's side, his vision blurring with tears as he gazed at his wife and daughter. Olivia looked exhausted but radiant, her green eyes bright with wonder as she counted the baby's fingers and toes. "She's perfect," Logan whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "What shall we call her?" Olivia asked, looking up at him with a tired smile. Logan thought for a moment. "Margaret Thomas Yeats," he said softly. To honor those who came before. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. It's beautiful, Logan, perfect for her. The boys were allowed in shortly after, their faces a mixture of awe and uncertainty as they peered at their tiny sister. She's so small, Samuel said, his usual confidence subdued by the solemnity of the moment. But she'll grow, Daniel observed, reaching out tentatively to touch the baby's hand. When her tiny fingers closed around his face lit up with wonder. Look, Pa, she's holding on to me. That's because she knows you're her big brother, Logan said, his arm around Daniel's shoulders. She's going to need both of you to teach her all sorts of things as she grows up. Samuel puffed up with importance. I can teach her to ride and rope. And I can teach her about books and drawing, Daniel added, not to be outdone. Olivia exchanged a glance with Logan, their hearts full to bursting with the simple perfection of this moment. Two boys who had once been shadows of themselves, now vibrant and hopeful. A baby who represented new beginnings, and the love that had made it all possible. The years that followed were not without challenges. The winter after Margaret Thomas's birth was particularly harsh, testing their resources and resilience. The bank changed hands, bringing new pressures and different terms that required careful navigation. And as the boys grew into young men, they faced the normal trials of adolescence. Samuel's impulsiveness, leading to a broken arm when he tried to ride a half-broken stallion. Daniel's sensitivity making him vulnerable to teasing when he started at the town school. But through it all, the foundation Olivia and Logan had built remained strong. Their partnership, which had begun as a practical arrangement born of necessity and growing affection, deepened into a love that weathered every storm, both literal and figurative, that life brought their way. When Margaret Thomas called Maggie by everyone except her mother, who insisted on her full name, was 3, Olivia surprised everyone, herself included, by becoming pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and Thomas Logan Yeats arrived without drama on a peaceful spring morning, completing their family circle. By the time Samuel turned 18, the Yeats ranch had become one of the most prosperous in the territory. The original debt had been paid off years earlier, and Logan had added adjoining land when it became available, expanding their operations to include not just cattle, but also horses bred specifically for the cavalry. I've been thinking, Pa, Samuel said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching young Maggie and Tommy chase fireflies much as Samuel and Daniel had done years before. I want to start my own place someday. Not right away, but eventually. Logan nodded, unsurprised. Samuel had always been the more independent of his sons, with a restless energy that sometimes reminded Logan of himself in younger days. You know, there's always a place for you here, but I understand wanting to build something of your own. Samuel looked relieved. I thought you might be disappointed. Never, Logan assured him. A man needs to find his own path. Just know that wherever that path leads you, your family is here. Daniel, now 16 and showing remarkable talent as an artist, had different dreams. His sketches of ranch life and the Wyoming landscape had caught the attention of a magazine editor passing through town, leading to a commission for a series of illustrations. You think I could study art formally someday? He asked Olivia one afternoon as they sat side by side, Daniel sketching while Olivia mended a shirt. In New York or Boston, maybe. I think you could do anything you set your mind to, Olivia replied, her green eyes still bright despite the fine lines that now framed them, regarding him with pride. Your father and I want you to follow your talents, Daniel. We always have, even if it takes me far from the ranch. Olivia set down her sewing, turning to face him fully. Distance doesn't change what matters, Daniel. Your father learned that when he lost your mother. I learned it when I lost Thomas. What's in your heart stays with you, no matter how far you travel. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Logan surprised Olivia with a party that brought together friends and neighbors from miles around. The ranch house and yard were decorated with lanterns and wildflowers. A band played music for dancing, and tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by every family in attendance. As dusk fell and the celebration continued around them, Logan led Olivia away from the crowd, down to the creek where he had proposed a decade earlier. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Yeats," he said, producing a small package from his pocket. Olivia unwrapped it carefully to reveal a silver locket, similar to the one from Thomas that she still kept in a special box, but new and engraved with her initials. "Open it," Logan urged. Inside, she found miniature portraits of all four children, Samuel and Daniel as they were now nearly grown, and Maggie and Tommy still round-cheeked and bright-eyed with childhood. "Oh, Logan," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "It's beautiful." "Not as beautiful as the life you've given us," Logan said, taking her hands in his. 10 years ago, I was a broken man trying to hold together the pieces of a life I didn't know how to live. My boys were growing up without joy or hope, and I couldn't see past my own grief to help them." Olivia squeezed his hands, her expression tender. "You were doing the best you could, Logan. Grief is a heavy burden to bear alone." "That's just it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't have to bear it alone anymore. None of us do. You taught us that, Olivia. You taught us that remembering doesn't have to mean living in the past, that honoring those we've lost doesn't mean we can't find happiness again." "We taught each other," Olivia corrected gently. "Every day I learn something new from you and the children. Every day I'm grateful for that storm that brought you to my door." Logan pulled her close, his arms encircling her with the familiar comfort of long love. "Who would have thought that a widow and a widower with 2 lost boys could find their way to this?" "I would," came a voice from behind them. They turned to see Daniel standing a few yards away, a sketch pad in his hand. "I've been drawing you," he explained, a hint of embarrassment in his voice. "I hope you don't mind." Logan and Olivia exchanged a look, then beckoned him closer. "Let's see," Olivia said, holding out her hand for the pad. The sketch was beautiful Logan and Olivia by the creek, their profiles illuminated by the setting sun, their posture speaking of intimacy and deep connection. Daniel had captured not just their likenesses, but something essential about their relationship, the way they leaned toward each other. The comfortable fit of Logan's arm around Olivia's waist, the tilt of her head as she looked up at him. "Daniel," Logan breathed, genuinely amazed by his son's talent. "This is incredible." Daniel ducked his head, pleased but modest. "I've been practicing, but it's easy to draw something beautiful when that's what you're looking at." Olivia hugged the young man, her heart full. "When did you get so wise, him?" Daniel shrugged, but his eyes, so like his birth mother's, were serious. "I remember what it was like before, when Pa was sad all the time and Samuel and I didn't know how to talk about Mama. And then you came and it was like the sun coming out after a long winter." Logan put an arm around his son's shoulders. "That's exactly what it was like, son." The three of them stood there by the creek, the sounds of the celebration drifting to them on the evening breeze, connected by bonds that transcended conventional definitions of family. Eventually, Samuel came looking for them, Maggie riding on his shoulders and Tommy trailing behind, clutching a stick he'd been using as an imaginary sword. "There you all are," Samuel called. "They're about to cut the cake, and these two insist you have to be there." "Cake," Maggie declared imperiously, her dark curls so like Olivia's bouncing as she bounced on Samuel's shoulders. "With frosting," Tommy added, as if this were a critical detail. Logan laughed, the sound echoing across the water. "Well, we can't keep the cake waiting, can we?" As they walked back toward the house, Logan took Olivia's hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. The home they'd built together, not just the physical structure, but the family they'd created, stood as a testament to the possibility of beginning again after loss, of finding hope when all seemed lost. And as they rejoined the celebration, surrounded by their children and friends, Logan caught Olivia's eye across the crowd. The love he saw there, steady, enduring, and still tinged with the wonder of discovery, was all the confirmation he needed that some storms, for all their fury, lead not to destruction but to new shores, new horizons, and the promise of clear skies ahead. In the years that followed, the Yeats family continued to evolve and grow. Samuel eventually did establish his own ranch, not far from his father's land, marrying the spirited daughter of a neighboring rancher and starting a family of his own. Daniel's artistic talents took him to New York for study, and then across the country and even to Europe. but he always returned to Wyoming, drawn back by the landscape and the family that had shaped his vision of the world. Maggie and Tommy grew up in the shadow of their older brother's accomplishments, but forged their own paths, Maggie with her mother's practical wisdom and her father's determined spirit, Tommy with a gift for storytelling that eventually led him to law and then politics. And through it all, Logan and Olivia remained the steady center around which their family orbited, a testament to the truth that love, when nurtured with care and honesty, can bloom even in the wake of grief's harshest winter. On quiet evenings, they would still sometimes walk down to the creek, hand in hand, to watch the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in colors no artist, not even Daniel with all his talent, could fully capture. And in those moments, they would remember the storm that had brought them together, grateful for the shelter they had found in each other's hearts.